Now, a lot of you might be thinking, can I just take a pill? Can I just take a prescription to prevent osteoporosis? Well, not so fast. There's a problem with that. One of the biggest problems that we're seeing currently is that there may be an increased fracture risk, ironically, in taking those medications because they seem to not lay down a bone that is of good quality. And let me explain why that is. Your bones are basically what I like to tell patients, a living, breathing tissue, meaning that they change all the time and they change based upon the demands placed upon them. And it's done through two cell types. One are osteoblasts, and remember B and blasts, like build. And osteoblasts build bone, and then their counterpart are osteoclasts. And osteoclasts, with a C, they tear down bone. And we depend on this balance of the osteoblasts and the osteoclasts working together to keep bone healthy. And essentially what you have to think about is that when we get cells in the body that are weak or they're damaged, our body will tear those down and replace them with healthier cells. And that's essentially the balance between the osteoblasts and the osteoclasts. What the medications for osteoporosis do, they don't really prevent let's just say what they do is they essentially paralyze the osteoclasts. They stop the ability of your body to tear down the bone. Now, if you think about the logic of that, if you have bone that isn't as strong, that's weakened, that's damaged, you kind of really would like to get rid of those cells, but the drugs don't allow that to happen. And then what happens is you keep building bone, building bone, building bone, but you're not, the osteoblasts are still working, but they're laying down bone over a structure that is probably inherently flawed. So there's been a lot of speculation ever since those drugs came out that in the long haul they probably weren't that advantageous. The truth of the matter is, how much do they really prevent fractures anyway? We're bombarded with advertisements. We've been told that they reduce fractures by 50%, but the reality is, when the clinical studies were done, sugar pills reduced the fractures by 2%. The osteoporosis drugs reduced the fractures by 1%. So all it was a 1% relative difference in fracture rate. That's not a whole lot. They were marketed as a 50% reduction in fractures because 2%, 1% is half of 2%, so that's a 50% reduction. But if you really look at it and you do the math, that's kind of fuzzy math because it was only a 1% relative reduction in fractures. So in essence, we may have been marketed to quite a bit. The other side of it is that in 4% of patients, there's a condition that can arise from using those drugs that's called osteonecrosis of the jaw. And essentially what it means is that you're losing, you're rotting bone. You have dead bone in the jaw. And it's a terrible condition. It's seen in about 4% of patients that take these drugs. And if you're going to make the argument that 4% isn't a lot, which it is, that is significant, then it really isn't significant when you're reducing fracture rates by only 1%. I mean, come on. Just look at the numbers. And then the other thing that's somewhat scary about these drugs is that we look at something called a half-life in pharmaceuticals, and a half-life is how long it takes for 50% of a drug to leave your body. And in some instances, it can be just minutes, very short rates of time before 50% of a drug is gone from the body. The scary thing about the drugs for osteoporosis is that the half-life of, say, Fosamax is known to be over 10 years. So it takes over 10 years to get even 50% of the drug out of your body. So that's kind of scary, really. It's really thought that some women will actually never get in their lifetime Fosamax out of their body. And that's kind of scary. So it means that people can carry, peak amounts of this medication in their body and suffer effects of it and really not be able to get rid of it appreciably in their lifetime. So, you know what? Osteoporosis, as we're going to learn through this tape, is really a disease that is much better managed and much better prevented through diet and lifestyle changes. Just like anything else, sorry to say, but drugs and pills aren't the quick fix answer. Actually, we have to change the way that we eat and change our lifestyle, and we can make lasting changes that go far beyond osteoporosis that are just absolutely great for our bodies.